Welcome to Rick's Scale Model Fix and another kit review. This time we're going to be taking a look at Kinetic 148 Scale Sea Harrier FA2. It's an older kit released in 2014, so 7 years ago now. And I think I'll label this sort of section as classic plastic. It's all too easy in the hobby to focus on what's new and sometimes take for granted what's actually available elsewhere and gloss over some of the older kits. So this was released, like we said, 7 years ago. Previously to that, the only other Harrier FA2 that was available was the Airfix Hybrid Kit. And when I say it was a hybrid kit, it was released in 1997 with a new FA2 fuselage, but it also contained parts from their FRS1 GR series, which, typical of its time, featured raised panel details and a poor fit. So as we know, a number of years has passed since this release, and this was the first Kinetic Harrier. Followed by this was the FRS1, which we'll take a look at in another video. Then their T-Bird, the two-seat Harrier, followed by the GR3, so completing the early first generation Harrier family. So let's take a tour around the box. So we've got some delightful box top artwork featuring ZD613 or Satan 1 in the decommissioning scheme of 800 Squadron Royal Navy in March 2004. So we've got cartograph decals on the box top there, designed by Cross Delta, a length of 296mm and a wingspan of 158 with 270 plus parts. So on the box side we've got some of the marking options. So we've got Satan 1 and ZH809 celebrating 25 years of flying sea harriers. 899 Squadron Yeovilton 2004 in blue. We've got some reference photos of a preserved example there, some model features and a quick synopsis and blurb of the type. On the other side just got maker's details and the box top artwork repeated. So that's the box top tour, so let's have a look what's inside. So these contents will be familiar to anybody who's built any of the Kinetic Harriers. So we've got a number of parts all bagged. Fuselage, clear parts, some of the smaller ancillary parts, pylons, etc. Drop tanks and weapons, small photo etch fret, a rather large and inclusive decal sheet, and a photocopy of the instruction booklet. So taking a look at the instruction booklet and the build sequence. So we've got a photocopied black and white reproduction, I think is the best way to term this. So just on the left hand page, page 2, we've got the parts map, paint index and cross-reference. And then we're into the build. Unsurprisingly, as always, it starts with the cockpit. Detail is reasonably good, but as it is an older kit, it is slightly soft. There's a good representation of the ejector seat, and this comes together into a familiar bulkhead cockpit tub seat. And then we're on to the bell mouth intake and the nose gear bay. So it follows to change the assembly sequence of this, seems to be the Achilles heel of these kits is the fit of the intakes. If you don't get this right, you end up with all manner of fit issues. Looking at the second assembly stage, we've got the air brake and fuselage halves coming together, and the focus of the trouble of the build usually emerges around this section here. So we'll have a look at that. We've got the air brake bay, undercarriage bay and the air brake being added. So the instructions are slightly confusing. There's a lot of information packed into some small diagrams. So with the fuselage coming together there, we get the intakes. The auxiliary blow-in doors are providing as open or closed inserts, which are then inserted, built up and added to the front of the model. I found with building previous examples of this kit, it's far better to actually build this section up first and join them to the fuselage, and you can get a reasonably good joint there, and then make the insides fit the internals later, and that way if you do get any problems you can take care of it early on. Upper wing section is another problem fit area of the kit. Nothing that some fettling, sanding and scraping can achieve, as we saw probably in my Harrier GR3 build. So if you take a look at that, I'll show you how to remedy the fit of the upper wing surface. So again, as you can see, the instructions are quite crammed, and already we're moving into the addition of the nose and undercarriage. And we've got the two split halves with the centre hub, and that's added to the model, and everything going in there. The fuel tanks, weaponry all being added, and the aid and gun pods and sidewinders. Nice exploded view diagrams showing the weapons fitting the pylons. Canopy going on. Quite a straightforward build, these early kits, with all the other lumps and bumps and vents and aerials and rudder being added there. Canopy being shown at the bottom of stage 10 in the open or closed position. Final assembly, we've got flaps and slats extended, flaps and ailerons drooped down. It's to note that first generation Harriers, the ailerons could only be positioned one up, one down, never both down together unless something was severely broken, and the flaps can be added in the lowered position as well. Moving on to the rear of the instruction booklet, and we've got a stencil placement guide. It's quite comprehensive, and then the marking options included in the kit. So like we said, ZD613 Satan 1 decommissioning scheme of 800 Squadron, Royal Navy, March 2004, with a rather striking markings in red. And again we've got the blue and white example of ZH809 celebrating 25 years of flying Sea Harriers, 899 Squadron, Royal Navy, Overton, October 2004. And then we've got a lot of choice to go through, and looking at it's very comprehensive. So looking down the table of contents there, you've got all the serial numbers. It might actually be worth paying dividends there to actually find pictures of the aircraft you're building, but there's various markings there for your Sea Harrier FA2s. And finally, rear page again, 801 and 899 Squadron, in various markings. So again, check your references, I think is the adage there. So the rather large and comprehensive decal sheet is a joy to behold, and it's printed by Cartograph, so aftermarket quality is assured, and it has to be the highlight of these Kinetic kits. I think it just about covers pretty much most, if not every, FA2 that flew. There's certainly a long list of serial numbers there, and separate digits and everything that you could make up per the airframe that you chose to build. Decals are well printed, they behave lovely when they're applied to the model, and a nice touch as always is the separate section for the intake door where the roundel actually covers. Just making up the other smaller parts in the kit is a small etch fret, and this includes various things like wing fences and seatbelt harnesses. This is sprue A, which contains the fuselage halves. Now, given that this is one of Kinetic's earlier releases, like we said, dating back 7 years. The fuselage detail is not comparable to anything that's boxed in the gold range that's current. Nonetheless, it doesn't embarrass itself and it's quite nice. It's a little bit soft in places, but overall certainly acceptable. Sprue B contains the FA2 wing with the extra vortex generators, and again the level of detail is quite nice. Nothing really much has changed with this wing, with the inclusion of the FRS one, which is still being used with the latest GR3. Sprue C contains the fuselage cockpit parts, which are quite softly moulded by today's standards. The ejector seats exhibits nice detail, and there's the intakes and that bell mouth intake. Cockpit instrument panel detail is nice, and it was refreshing to see with the later releases of the kits that Kinetic actually retooled these intakes. Sprue D deals with the pylons, aid and gun pods and the FA2 nose. There's the wheels with the nice hub detail and the single moulded nozzles, air brake and canopy sections. Sprue E has the undercarriage parts and the flight controls, along with the in-flight refueling probe and the outriggers, and again well moulded, good detail. Sprue F, which I'm not going to unbag because some of the parts have actually broke loose, is the clear runner. So we've got all the small navigation lights and the front cockpit and rear sliding section. The remaining two sprues are identical, and they're just the weapons fit. Sidewinders, dropped, and the larger FA2 style drop tanks. So there we have Kinetic's 1/48 scale FA2. It was their first venture into the Harrier family. It's stood the test of 7 years very well. It builds up into a great looking replica of the FA2. It does take care to put together, but anybody who's got average modelling skills, certainly following a dry fit and test regime will pay dividends, and it goes together quite well. So we've got some striking decal options straight out the box. So until next time, please look after yourselves and take care.